In this segment, we're going to start off by turning to Blatant Blathiest for a look at how a former GOP member, the supposed Family Values Party, amassed several life sentences for crimes related to child abuse. Apparently, he was found guilty in some similar crimes back in the early 2000s. Blatant, is this also a case of a faulty justice system, or is this perpetrator solely to blame?
Yeah, let's look into the two-tiered justice system. So a now incarcerated former GOP leader in Hayes County, a county in Austin, well, in the Austin area, I should say, he's been sentenced to 410 years in prison for essay of children and child pornography. I hate even saying it. But this story comes to us from KVUE. It's written by Lauren Peterson, and it was reported on March 11th, 2024. So this is fairly recent. And once again, we get a new recent example of one side of the American political system, the side that constantly screams about protecting children and the ones that accuse people that have story hours in libraries of grooming children. You see that their standard practice is projecting. And the story also shows, just like I was saying, that two-tiered system I keep hearing about, because just like Jimmy just kind of hinted at, this man did have two very similar occurrences in the early 2000s, and only in such a two-tiered system can someone who pled guilty to essay of a 15-year-old child in 2005 be free to face allegations of abuse in 2012, only for there to be no actual investigation. And the victim of this crime returned to live with him after CPS was no longer involved. The fact that he only now is being punished is being celebrated by the local law enforcement. They're giving props to the prosecutors and saying such a good case, but I don't think this deserves any celebration. Why would we celebrate a system that allowed to have more victims in this situation? I mean, him getting 4 consecutive 75-year sentences for each count of abuse. Okay, cool. But it would have been much better to catch this when it happened the first time, or, to not have politicians be given so much power that they're allowed to do this even once.
So
that's where I'm coming from.
Blatant, talk to us some more about the two-tiered system you're referencing. Does this system work, in favor of some people and not such in favor of others? How is that possible? And can you shed some more light on that?
I love when people say there's a two-tier justice system, especially people in power when they're finally faced with any allegations, when they finally get any kind of consequences for their actions. There's always a two-tier justice system. But there's actually 3 to 4 tiers of the justice system. There's one for minorities. There's one for pretty much everybody that's not a straight cis white male. And then there's one for the powerful. And that's the one that we are faced with right now in this situation and other very popular situations in our current political sphere. But yeah, those are the political systems that actually exist and not the ones that someone made up to combat allegations. So the real justice system is 3-tiered, and the powerful, the rich, powerful, the well-connected, they actually kind of stand outside of the system because they are rarely punished. Just look at this guy. He's had 3 chances to be a horrible person. He's had 3 chances at this, and he's successfully completed all 3 chances to be a horrible piece of crap. So yeah.
Cynthia, do you think in this system that Blatant's talking about that his status as an elected official, while he may be getting special treatment, do you think that for us as American people, and certainly for the children that have been victimized, does this status add another layer of betrayal?
Yeah, because it shows that the system itself is not protecting who it was supposedly designed for. I mean, like, if you look at the case in of itself, like the leniency shown to Dresner's previous conviction in 2005, where his sentence was reduced despite pleading guilty to assaulting a 15-year-old, is deeply troubling. It raises questions about the efficacy of the justice system in protecting vulnerable individuals from repeat offenders like Dresner. And furthermore, the revelation that one of the victims had made allegations about Dresner in 2012, yet the law enforcement and child protective services failed to fully investigate the matter. It underscores systemic failures in child protection protocols. So I really get very bent out of shape when I look at people who would try to defend this person because he was in a position of power,
Mhm.
and because, he actually held like a seat of high regard, to say that, oh, we're just going to just go towards him and lean on him because, like, he's our good old boy, right? We are the ones that we're going to protect him, yet the most vulnerable in our population, which are children, are going to be completely disregarded. And this is the reason why I constantly say that when I hear from the right, when they want to get rid of drag time story hour, like Blatant actually mentioned, or if they want to get rid of, actually speaking about or even talking about LGBTQ experiences in books out of libraries, and also even saying that we are going to protect life, and that's why we want to come against like procedures of abortion, that they're really not about protecting life.
Mhm.
They're really not about protecting children. They're only about protecting their own narrative.
Mhm. Yep, and we've seen this time and again where these hypocritical acts take place, and these people are really left without any legitimate defense of their own values or what it is they claim to stand for, because we see them all time and again guilty of these very same things that they accuse their political opponents of. Um, but I still want to stick to this idea that there's an extra level of betrayal because this is an elected official. Now, Kelly, I want to ask you, does it really matter that he was an elected official? Shouldn't we be equally outraged, or should we treat this with extra severity because of this man's position?
No,
So
we should be treating it with extra severity because of this
Okay.
man's position. I especially so because of this man's position. This is a man in position of power that he can hold over other people's heads. This is a person who can bend people to his will and make them do what he wants because of his position of power. So yeah, he should be held even more accountable than most people are. I really I have a hard time talking about the
Sure.
child abuse. I'm really sorry, and it makes me wonder what Texas, Austin in particular, what the hell are you doing down there? How are these people getting into these powers of position? Does anyone vet these people? And it's not only a statement on this guy, but it's also a statement on the Hays County GOP and the national organization as a whole, because they didn't look into this guy's background before they gave him this position of power. And that's what should have been done. He never should have been able to be in this position where he could wield this power over other people, where he could throw off these indictments, these allegations, I should say, not indictments, these allegations. And I think he should be held more accountable. Sure.
Well, Kelly, do you think that the larger Hays County GOP is at fault more than the justice system from 2005 that failed to hold him accountable accurately or adequately? I mean, who do we really point the finger at? His peers, the people that brought him into power, or the people that allowed him to get away with it in the first place? No, I'm not saying there's not some blame that should be shared, but who should we be more enraged with? Is it the system that failed? Cynthia mentioned faulty investigations by the police and child protective services, right?
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, please.
I think that's who we should be pointing the finger at, because none of these other two things would have happened. We never would have gotten into this position of power, being the head of the Hays County GOP, if these original allegations had been followed up on, if he had been actually indicted on these, had charges pressed against them, didn't have this poor young person put back into his custody. All of the problems that come later with the GOP, with his peers, all of that wouldn't have happened because this guy would have been in jail. So I think we should point our finger at the justice system for not putting him in jail and letting him become a person that was be able to be in this position of power.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's fair to say, well, this person should be held to a higher standard. I think that they should have equal punishment as anybody who commits this crime. But I certainly think that we should be more outraged because an elected official was in a position like this. And we should be holding our own government to even more scrutiny for this being allowed to happen. And I hear this a lot. In fact, I had a discussion recently with somebody who was arguing the commonality of child SA in cathedrals and Catholic Christian organizations. And they argued with me, well, the numbers of priests committing assault is just as high as teachers or coaches. And I said, whoa, hold on a minute. This is church. Should there not be a higher expectation? I mean, you are the people that are arguing that the world is the way it is because God was taken out of schools, but God was never taken out of churches. And this is still happening. And should we not be more outraged that a person that claims to have moral superiority is taking advantage of children? Yeah, we should be outraged when teachers and coaches do it or whoever. But specifically, the very people that we entrust with a kind of a higher expectation, a higher standard, doing that, we definitely deserve the opportunity to turn around and hold them to a higher standard. Blayton, I wanted to talk to you about the first victim. So this first victim, he pled out, right, and was got a reduced sentence, but something happened with the victim. The initial victim. Do you want to tell us about that?
The one in 2005, I'm not actually familiar with what happened with them, but I know the one in 2012 was living with him when the assault was occurring. After no investigation actually occurred, when these allegations were made by the victim, CPS actually returned this child to his custody so it could continue. Now, no more allegations were made at the time, but we can kind of infer what happened. We can, you know what I mean? I wouldn't say it's jumping to conclusions to say it continued, especially with him already knowing that there's going to be no consequences. So just like we were all saying, yes, he should be held to a higher standard. And I feel like Instagram has made celebrities what priests and politicians should be. It's humanized them. Like, we have more access to celebrities. They used to be on this pedestal, like they were untouchable, their lives are perfect. But now we see that, these are just people. We don't have to actually listen to them. He's actually stupid. He's just rich and stupid. So when we have so much access to, especially politicians, they're celebrities now too. There's so many acronyms for politicians, I can't keep up. So we should be able to look at them as people and hold them, not only just hold them to that standard, that higher standard, because you're a person that's being entrusted with this, but we should be able to vet them as if they were somebody coming into a job of trust. You know what I mean? We should be able to have an actual higher standard, not just saying, this person is up here, but actually vetting them to make sure that they are someone whose character matches where we are going to put them.
And I don't think that kind of process is going to develop from within these Christian organizations or even within the GOP. I think that there's a correlation between Christian nationalism and the members of, the far right, not calling them all, one kind of person. I'm not trying to put a label on all of them, but there is a correlation. And I almost wonder if skeptics and humanists like ourselves, who monitor these kinds of things, who do shows like these and have these conversations, should step up and do it. And, Cynthia, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts as far as it relates to the topic that we're discussing now. How does that impact the skeptical, secular humanist mission, if you will?
I think that for us who happen to be on this side of the aisle are going to take a look at stories like this and constantly call out the hypocrisy, the lack of protection for the victims, and also call out the I have to go back to indoctrination of like people who would say that this is okay because he was elected official, he was a Christian, he was a man of God, or whatever other things that might, be thrown out. And I kind of want to go back to this whole idea about vetting. So, when you are up for a job, and especially, let's say, for instance, it's a job with the government or you're dealing with government contracts, there is a serious vetting of that particular individual, depending on what they're doing, in order to see if they're not only just qualified, but if their background actually is clear of anything that would be considered a conflict of interest, criminal, or anything else that would be problematic that would keep them from being able to do their job effectively. And unfortunately, we don't necessarily have a robust system per se for elected officials like that. We damn near don't have it for the church. It's more like so that if you are saying that you are a man of God, a woman of God, a person of God, that's it, that's all you need. And I think that in the past, we also relied on the fourth estate to be more of the vetting portion of when we're looking at our elected officials. So, the fourth estate being the press. And the press would oftentimes dig into people's background, show this particular person who was running, and tell the people, this is what you have in front of you. And it's up to you to take a look at their credentials, their qualifications, and also their past, and come up with a proper solution if you're going to support this person or not. But I think that we're in this particular state again, since we're so indoctrinated as a society, and dulls the sensibility of critical thinking and skepticism as is, that we are kind of just like accepting whatever is in front of us because, as Blayton talked about, celebrity, leadership status, clout, however you want to put it. And sometimes I feel like as a skeptic, as a humanist, even when we're doing shows like this and we're pointing out the fallacies in these positions using facts, sometimes I feel like that we're almost like, blowing in the wind. But that doesn't stop us because we're still here, right? And I think that it's more like that whole thing about like each one teach one. So we have to be to the point where, like, what? Everybody may not listen, but somebody's going to listen. And hopefully that somebody who actually listens will make a difference.
Absolutely. Very well said. Yeah, I think that the conversation is worth carrying on. Okay. If one person listens, if two person listen, and then it will hopefully grow someday. But I think the major change will come when somebody decides, we should look at ourselves the same way that we look into our political opponents to try and slander them. Maybe if we held ourselves to the same standards we're accusing our opponents of violating, we might actually be worth supporting. But until then, these kinds of egregious acts are just going to be met with, more backlash, and rightfully so. I want to close this segment out by finally going to Kelly and then Blayton. Any closing thoughts?
I want to mention the victims. These are kids these are fragile human beings. They are not fully developed emotionally yet. And to have something like this happen to them is going to carry through their whole lives. And I'm 64 years old. And I'm still struggling with the things that happened to me as a child. And I just want everybody to think about the victims here and what they have to live with for the rest of their lives and why this guy belongs in jail. That's it.
Blatant.
I just want to point out something that we kind of alluded to, just how separated everything is. I think I've said this on several episodes at this point. Our American political, just the system in general, it's taken as sports. That's what it's become. Everybody is rooting for their team, and it doesn't matter what happens as long as you're on their team. And until we can separate that, there will not be any real changes, because we can look at something like football. We've seen quarterbacks. He's a great quarterback, but he's done this heinous thing, and it's excused because we want to win. That's all that matters. We have to win. Our side has to win. So until we can actually deal with that as a society, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah, very well said. And I think as difficult as it may be, we on the nonprofits feel like we have a responsibility to bring these situations, these stories out into the open and highlight them for the atrocities that they are. Just in doing this show, I can recall certain articles where a priest in a Colorado Springs organization is still active, but who did some time behind bars for these kinds of atrocities. And a study recently found that within that very congregation, hundreds of children were assaulted over the last few decades. Similarly, we see research coming out of France, where from 1950 to 2020, 300,000 children were assaulted by religious leaders in Catholic churches. These are important stories, and it's heartbreaking, but we have to tell them. And for more important stories, click the link below.